Good morning, church. How's everyone doing this morning? Great. Everyone have a good Christmas, I hope. Yes. Happy and healthy. My name is Cleet Ross. I'm one of the ministers here at New Hope. And so if you're joining us this morning at home, online, wherever you are, I just want to say a special hey to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We miss you, and we look forward to seeing you soon. But I'm excited to be with you this morning. Our normal pulpit minister, Mark Roof, is out of town visiting family, and so I get to kind of fill in for him when he's gone, and I'm so grateful for those opportunities. But as I was thinking about kind of this time of year and the things that we have going on in our lives, I thought we could talk about the table today. I don't know about you, but a lot of us probably spend a lot of time around a table, or kitchen table, dining room table, whatever you want to call it. And especially during the holidays, right? We get to hopefully get together with family, with friends, share a meal and things like that. And so this morning, I wanted to start off with a foundational truth that if you take nothing else away from today, I think you'll be blessed by this statement. This comes from Julia Child. She says this: people who love to eat are always the best people. Can I get an amen? Yes, I think so. So if you hear nothing else today, just remember that. People who love to eat are always the best people. But here's the thing about the table. Life happens around the table. Think of all the moments you've had in your life so far. How many of those memories do you have sharing a meal with someone? Important conversations that take place around a table, fellowship and community. The table is all about fellowship. It's all about communion, and it's the longing of our hearts. Kristen Schell wrote this book. It's called The Turquoise Table. Has anyone seen this book? Barnes & Noble, Mardel, anywhere? Maybe. So this is what this book is about. It's all across America. Neighbors, friends, and strangers are getting to know one another at a turquoise picnic table in the most simple place of all, their front yards. And so she wrote this book kind of about hospitality. She was looking for ways to connect with her friends, with new people, to meet new people in different places. And so she decided to paint a picnic table, just a wooden picnic table, turquoise, and stick it in her front yard. And she says the craziest thing happened. They would be out there hanging out as a family, and people would be walking by, and they would stop and sit down and have conversation. They met new people. They met strangers. They got closer to their neighbors. And she said it started this movement of what she's calling front yard people. And I think why this resonates with us so deeply is because it's really at the core of who we are. It's the longing of our hearts is connection, communion, fellowship with each other, and ultimately with God. And I think right now, in particular, after this past year, that's certainly something that we're longing for, is connection and community. And we're trying to figure out ways to do that in new ways because of the pandemic and things that are happening. But ultimately, that thing and that goal is the same. And why is that? Why is that such a core to who you are? And I would say it's because it's the very heart of the God who created us. See, God intended the table. That was his plan all along, fellowship with him at his table. And we see this happening in the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament. In the Old Testament, we see it happening at Sinai and in the covenant with Israel and the offerings and the festival feasts that are happening. God is at the table with his people. And then, of course, in the New Testament, this continues in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ as God again becomes flesh and sits at the table with his people over and over and over again. And we're going to be in Luke today, specifically Luke chapter 14, but I want to show you a few things. And here's what I would challenge you with this week. Go back through and read Luke and Acts even, and just kind of skim through and look for all the places where Jesus is at the table. Because Luke's gospel in particular is very oriented around Jesus' table ministry, this fellowship ministry that Jesus has as he's sharing meals with people from all different walks of life. And the passage we'll look at today, he's sharing meals with people that no one else would want to share a meal with. And so what do we make of this God who's designed us for community and connection? And really, a core theme to the word that we get to share, that we have from God, at the heart of it is this idea that God is inviting us back to the table and that he is making a place for us there. And so as we look at Luke, I'm going to just point out a few places in Luke where these meals are happening, Jesus' kind of ministry and all these things that are happening. Luke's gospel, one theologian has said that really the organizing principle of Luke's story is eating and drinking. And so what we see in Jesus in Luke chapter 5, he goes to Levi's house and has a meal. Luke chapter 7, Simon the Pharisee's house. Luke chapter 10, Martha's house. Luke chapter 11, another Pharisee's house. Luke chapter 14, another Pharisee's house. Luke chapter 19, Zacchaeus' house. And then in Luke chapter 22, we have the Last Supper. And then Luke chapter 24, the breaking of bread at Emmaus, when Jesus reveals himself to those travelers. And again in Luke chapter 24, his supper with the disciples. So really, table fellowship is a focal point of Jesus' ministry, and it becomes a focal point of the early church. God is doing a thing around the table. And so let's look at this passage this morning. This comes from Luke chapter 14, 12 through 14. It says this: Then Jesus said to his host, when you have a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you'll be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So Jesus, at all of those meals that I just mentioned, all these different ones that we see here, if you look through them and read them, you'll identify some different things that are going on, different themes around what's happening. The theme of this particular meal here is that all are invited. Man, I want that. Think about the grace that's involved in inviting the outcasts. Listen to the people who are mentioned in this passage. These are the people on the margins of society, the people that no one else wanted to invite in. The crippled, the poor, the lame, the blind. Jesus was notorious for eating and drinking and sharing a meal with the least of these. And so that's an interesting thing. And all of this kind of reminds us of the Lord's Supper, which we're going to take together, and we do that every week here, which I'm so grateful for. And a lot of times when we come to the Lord's Supper, it tends to be solemn and kind of solitary, and maybe rightly so. But what we see in the Gospel of Luke is that the Lord's Supper is tied directly to all these other meals. In fact, it's the Lord's Supper that makes all these other meals make sense. It kind of gives them their meaning. It helps us to understand more deeply what's happening in Jesus' fellowship ministry at the table. John Mark Hicks has this to say about it. He's a theologian and author. In his book, Come to the Table, he says this: the altar was an act of self-humiliation for the sake of the table. The altar, in terms of its goal, serves the table. The altar, by its atoning work, enables the table. And atonement secures communion. The cross grounds the table. Let that sink in for a second. So God's intention all along, his whole story of bringing us back to him so we could sit at his table, feast with him at his table, and through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross, he has made a way for us to do that. So in Luke's gospel, as all of it is kind of organized around these meals at the table, the Last Supper makes all those other meals make sense. There's a radical grace to that. Like fundamentally, that should kind of shake you to your core to understand that you are so loved by this God who made you, and he wants communion with you. So no wonder that the deepest longing of our hearts is connection and belonging, to be known, to be seen, to be loved, to be heard, to be understood, and to be in fellowship with each other and in fellowship with our Creator. Robert Farrar Capon says this, and he's an Episcopal priest, author, and then my favorite part, he's also a chef, so he might have some things to say about the table. He says this: grace cannot prevail until our lifelong certainty that someone is keeping score has run out of steam and collapsed. Woo! Grace cannot prevail until our lifelong certainty that someone is keeping score has run out of steam and collapsed. That is powerful. And that's the message of the gospel. Come to the table. I bid you come. I've made a space for you. I've secured a place for you at this table. Please come and fellowship with me and fellowship with your brothers and sisters. That's a powerful thing. And it's, like I said, kind of the deepest longings of our hearts. But we get into this idea of scorekeeping. And this idea that God is keeping track and making a list and checking it twice maybe. And we do that with each other as well. Sometimes we're not as full of grace and mercy as we would like others to be towards us. And I don't know if you've heard of Leon Bridges. He's an artist. He has a song called The River, or just River. And this is some of the lyrics from it. I just want to read it to you because I think it really captures our angst and our angst and our longing for what this is. It says this: been traveling these wide roads for so long. My heart's been far from you, 10,000 miles gone. Oh, I want to come near and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands and my lips are unclean. In my darkness, I remember my mama's words reoccur to me. Surrender to the good Lord, and he'll wipe your slate clean. Take me to your river, I want to go. Take me to your river, I want to know. Dip me in your smooth waters. I go in as a man with many crimes. Come up for air as my sins flow down the Jordan. Take me to your river, I want to go. Take me to your river, I want to know. If that doesn't get to the heart of this longing inside of us about being in community with God and our desire to meet him there, but then also all these things that we kind of feel about ourselves, the guilt, the shame, maybe some anxiety, things that we're battling in our own lives, and feeling unworthy. And God is saying, don't you see? I've taken care of that. It's not about your worth. The blind, the lame, the cripple, whoever I bid you come, it's not about your worth. Our God is in the business of transforming ordinary things into holy things, scraps of food into feasts. So it's not about you, it's about him and what he's done. Like John Mark Hicks said, the cross grounds the table. It makes the way for the table, for this community and this fellowship. And I love this. Marie Carr, a poet, says this: "You are loved," someone said. "Take that and eat it." That's so good. So this morning, what do we do when we come to tables? We're looking for sustenance, something to nourish us. And God invites us to his table for the ultimate nourishment, for ultimate community and fulfillment. And we find that with each other. And again, sometimes we get in our own ways. We start to think about this idea of worthiness. I'm just not worthy. Or we place that label on other people. Well, at least I'm not fill in the blank. But God is telling you this morning, it's this kingdom that Jesus is coming to enact, this thing that is happening, the already but not yet. Jesus bringing the future into the present. He's telling you, this isn't a kingdom for the worthy, but a kingdom for the hungry. So are you hungry this morning, church? Are you ready to come to the table together? Because here's the thing, and I've talked about this kind of before, God is inviting us back to the garden, and he's also calling us to help create that very space. So as we get around tables together, at any moment in life, may we live out this story. Church, may we be a place where we say, all are welcome here. Come in. Here's some bread and some wine. Sit with us. Talk with us. It's not about being worthy. It's just about being hungry. So everywhere we go, at every table we sit at, may we live this out. May we enact it in our own lives, in our relationships with others, strangers that we meet, whether it's at a turquoise picnic table in our front yard, or someone at a coffee shop, or someone at a McDonald's, wherever it is, whatever table you find yourself at, may you remember this truth. It's not about being worthy. It's about being hungry. And people who love to eat are always the best people. So let me pray for you, and then we're actually going to, as a part of this, I'm just going to do communion together with you, and we'll close that out that way. But let me pray for you. Fathers, thank you so much for this reminder. Thank you so much for loving us, for inviting us to your table, for making space for us at your table, and through the work of Jesus, taking care of that. May we be reminded every day that it's not about being worthy, but it's about being hungry, and may we be so hungry for you. May we be hungry for fellowship with one another. May we look for spaces in our days to get to the table with you and with other people. May we love each other well. May we offer grace and mercy in such a way that people look at us and go, "You're crazy." And we can say, "No, we're just loved." May we take that and eat it. So may we come to see these truths today. May we come to live them out all of our days. And pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.